Hi everyone, my name is Jen Giffen, and I was really good at playing the game of school. Who knows the game of school, right? I'd ask the teachers, what do you want me to say? And they would tell me, and I would say it back to them in slightly different words, and they'd beam with pride how clever I was, and I would get an A, and it was amazing. Except I recently heard that a third of students, they don't play the game of school well. And as an educator, notwithstanding a mother of 3 adorable little boys, that worries me. So I want to share 2 stories with you today, and I want you to think, how can we do better? A couple of months ago, I was speaking with a friend of mine who was telling me about her son, Spencer. He's in the 3rd grade and he's 8 years old, and he's been running into some trouble with school since about kindergarten, and they've decided to have him tested for ADHD. You see, Spencer's the kind of kid you gotta fight to do everything. You have to fight him to get out of bed, you have to fight him to put on his clothes, you have to fight him to go to school. There's days where you have to fight this kid to breathe oxygen. And so it's starting to translate now, this behavior, into his extracurriculars. You see, he plays piano, but he doesn't really play piano. He jumps around, he clowns around. Mom says he's probably never gonna do a test. He's never done any kind of recital. She doesn't actually think he knows how to play songs. So of course, when his teacher asks, hey, who knows how to play the piano and wants to do the national anthem at the assembly? Spencer volunteers. The kid who can't play piano. You can't fake the national anthem. And my friend was in a conundrum because she said, do I crush his dreams and say, honey, I don't think you can do this? Or does she set him up for potential failure or embarrassment? So she calls the piano teacher, and I imagine it goes like this. Spencer's volunteered to play O Canada at the assembly. Okay, how long do we have? 5 days? Yeah, 5 days. So Spencer goes and watches that night and says, don't worry, Mom, as an 8-year-old does, I got this. And every day for the next 5 days, the kid you had to fight to do everything wakes up his parents practicing the national anthem on the piano. The day of the assembly comes, and, well, judge for yourself. In and around 2005, I was a student success teacher, which is sort of like a special ed resource teacher, but with students who don't have any exceptionalities. And I worked a lot with this one kid, Daniel. Daniel was popular, he was athletic, he was well-liked, he was a kind soul, and he struggled in school a lot. He would rather look lazy than stupid. You know these kids. They show up at your door like Daniel did one day and said, Miss, I have a really big assignment in my grade 11 English class due tomorrow. I said, okay, come on in, let's get going. So we worked all day. He decided not to go out for lunch. I'm gonna work on this. He even asked if he could stay and work on it through phys ed class. And I called his mom and I told her what had happened. She's like, okay, great, we'll work tonight, and they did. And she called me the next morning and she said, Mrs. Giffen, I can't believe it. He finished and he's proud of his work. In 11 years, I don't know that I've ever seen this. And I thought, this is wonderful, and I was so excited, and I went running upstairs to my colleague's class at the end of the period, and I said, hey, Dan, he handed in, right, it's there, and he flipped through the papers, and he's like, weird look on his face, looked again. Daniel hadn't handed it in. And I thought, what on earth? Well, I don't know if you know anything about redheads, but us gingers, we got tempers that flare a little bit, and I was none too happy with Daniel, so I went tearing down the hall. I yanked him out of Italian class, and I went up one side of this kid and down the other. It was not my finest moment as a human being. And I said to him, why didn't you hand this in? You worked so hard, I worked so hard, your mom worked so hard, what's going on? He stared at the floor. And I said, you need to own this behavior. And he looked up at me, and his eyes were glassed over with tears, and in a strong but quiet voice, he said these words to me. He said, Miss, I didn't hand it in because when it's in my bag, it is still good. When it's in my bag, it's still good. And I thought, oh my God, 15 years later, I still cry at these words. And I ask us again, how can we do better? It's great that we're here for tech. It's great that we want great things for our kids, but it's about the kids. So I'm not going to glean what I've taken from these stories in my learning, because your edu onion has very different layers than mine. But I want you to think, how can you do better with the challenging kid? How can you do better with a kid like Spencer, who will be able to bookmark the time that he learned to play O Canada in 5 days as a time that proved to him he can do anything? How can you do better with a kid like Daniel, who would rather look lazy than stupid, and keeps his work in his bag so his pride stays alive, because when it's in his bag, it's still good. Ladies and gentlemen, we can all do better. Thank you.